Your CPR dummy over there is having a bad day. Looks like he's throwing up in your plant.
He's always having a bad day.
Yeah, it's kind of his thing.
Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint Macro. Brought to you by Public Safety and Education and the Trigger Pressers Union.
This episode is brought to you by Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Next Level Training, the makers of the SIRT pistol. Mike Hughes and Britt Lentz are rock stars, and you can be too if you train with a SIRT. TheGunfood.com, your online source for ammunition. Mountain Man Medical, the right medical training and gear should be accessible to every American. Meet the Pressers is also generously supported by other fine companies, ranges, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Meet the Pressers. I'm Matt Mallory, and this is my guest co-host, Jacob Paulsen. And we have a very special guest today, but before that, I want to get into a little bit about the show and what we do. We talk about guns, gears, gadgets, different things like that, as well as occasionally blow things up in a gear review. I need to get doing more of that, and in due time. Actually, probably should do it soon because I got a new IFAK that we're going to talk about today. Anyway, Jacob, would you like to introduce our guest of the day?
Happy to be here. With us today, we have Brian McLaughlin. Brian is a former, Brian is a former Navy Corpsman. He was deployed with a Marine detachment a couple times overseas. And has been, cutting his teeth in the medical world. He has been through EMT school on multiple occasions, and today is the face and dude behind the brand and company Mountain Man Medical. Grew up in Colorado. He's got siblings. He's got kids, crazy boys. His dad is a firefighter. I don't know. I could keep going.
All true.
No lies there.
Nah.
Nice. I was good to have you on, Brian. Definitely. Have we met in person prior to SHOT Show, or was SHOT Show the first time we met in person?
I think that's the first time we kind of talked and interacted. I think I've seen you around all sorts of places before.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, we just we were in the Caesar floor and we're just walking around like, oh hey. Yeah. It was kismet.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that you walk by somebody like, wait, do I know that guy? I do know that guy. I should probably stop and say hi.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Like in this industry, there's so many people that you're friends with because we do so much, especially now since COVID, we do so much online and you friend people and then you see them at SHOT Show or after the fact, you're like, wait a minute, you were at SHOT Show? Damn it. Yeah. So
Very true.
Good that we bumped into each other. All right. So we've got a hot topic for today, right?
Yes,
I think it's hot.
We're going to be getting into top IFAK mistakes, some of the things that we might want to think about when we're carrying our own individual first aid kits, and some of the things that you could probably stay away from, some of the things you might want to add to your kits and that kind of stuff so that you're hitting all the wickets that you need to in order to keep somebody alive when they've been through some traumatic experiences, physically, of course.
Sure. Yeah, I taught a pepper spray class Sunday in Michigan, and I had one of the students say, oh no, it was a UTM class Saturday in Michigan, and one of the students said, if you get shot in the head and you start bleeding up in your scalp, don't worry, I got a tourniquet for you. I was like, I got a tourniquet too, so we'll put two on. It was like they worked together, and it was a little bit of witty humor between the two.
That's just good medicine.
Just for the listeners and viewers to know, we're not condoning putting a tourniquet on somebody's neck if they have a head wound. That is not how you use a tourniquet. Just got to make sure I say that. Yeah, very much so. Liability reasons, I got to say that. So without further ado, Brian, take it away.
All right. Well, I would say one of the things that people don't tend to do is carry IFAKs at all. I think, that's a pretty standard thing for military and law enforcement, but the average civilian doesn't really pay too close attention to that. And I don't carry like a big trauma bag on me all the time, but there are some key things that I like to have nearby at least, especially in your vehicle. Because you're never too far away from your vehicle, for the most part. And so if you have a trauma kit in there, that's a great way to kind of have something at least nearby, especially if you get into a car accident or if you come up upon a car accident and somebody's hurt inside, you can do something to help them out. That's one of the things I hear about the most. Most people responding to a traumatic event are usually doing so like on the highway or on the roads of some kind. So
Gotcha.
Having something like that's pretty important.
So having it on you is the first tool, right? Better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it.
Yeah. Well, so like a lot of people will talk about, improvising things like I'm not going to bother to carry a tourniquet because I'm wearing a belt, right?
Yeah,
Or I'm just going to get my shoelaces and I'm going to tie on a tourniquet that way. And it's possible to save a life that way, but it's not the most efficient use of your time. It takes time to make improvised gear. And the whole time that you're trying to run around and find all that gear, you're casually sitting there bleeding out. Right.
So the excuse me, the analogy I use with that with people they're like, oh, I'll just use my belt. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do open heart surgery on you with a butter knife.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? If a scalpel is the tool made to do open heart surgery, why wouldn't I use the tool made for that task? Butter knife's good for buttering bread, not good for open heart surgery. So why would you use a belt if you could use a tourniquet?
Right.
On Brian's YouTube channel, I don't know how long ago this was, Brian, you might remember, but you interviewed some guy who he came up on a car accident, like it was late at night, and also on the scene, who also had stopped to help out, was like a doctor and a nurse, and then there was this dude. But of the three of them that were there, the doctor, the nurse, and the dude that Brian interviewed, the kid who's not the doctor or nurse, he's the one that had the IFAK. He's the one that had the gear.
Wow.
So he's the one who jumped in and started rendering aid, despite there being more qualified people around who didn't have any of the stuff with them.
Right.
I think that's pretty remarkable. And I think, here's the funny thing. Like, this show is Meet the Pressers. So we're talking to shooters, people who shoot guns, trigger pressers. And in the gun space, we're often talking about like microseconds mattering, right? So it's like, oh, you don't want the gun in your gun safe when someone breaks in the front door, like it's got to be on you. And that's a valid line of thinking in the gun world. But in the medical space, like it's not microseconds. Maybe it's seconds. It's definitely minutes, but it's probably not microseconds. So I don't have to be like, draw my IFAK out and like start, throwing it down on people. Like I appreciate what Brian said about, within relative immediate access, right? It's in my car. Maybe it's in my backpack if I'm a student, or maybe if I'm a briefcase person. I don't know. Surely those people are still around. And maybe it's in the briefcase. I take it to the office with me. I got one right here on my desk, right behind me. I don't know if anybody can see it there. So that's serves the house,
Yeah. One of the things I like to see a lot is there's a lot of mothers that are starting to carry trauma kits in their purses. I think that's a pretty substantial way of always having something on you, especially if your boys are, little savages like mine. You never know what they're going to get into.
Right.
So having some good trauma gear on them so that you could, patch them up when they, fall out of a tree or, whatever types of shenanigans they're into. So we have the tracker. That's kind of like our smaller version. It's more designed for on your belt, but it would work really well in a purse. And it has everything that you might need in it to really take care of somebody in like one of those bad situations.
Wow. That's good.
So I would say like the first thing that I see, one of the mistakes being that people carry in their trauma kits is going to be either cheap or bad gear. A lot of times people will, especially with tourniquets, they'll go and try to get on Amazon and they'll look up tourniquets. And there's a lot of tourniquets that are coming out of China that are cat knockoffs or counterfeits. And I've done some testing on those. I've got a video on that on my YouTube channel. And they do not work very well at all. And some people will say, well, it's $30 for a cat tourniquet. I'm sure this counterfeit cat tourniquet will work just fine. I've actually seen a lot of comments like that, and I really disagree. because it's about $10 for an Amazon tourniquet, and it's $30 for a legitimate cat tourniquet or a soft T. And that's not a whole lot of money in my mind to save my own life or my family member's life. So I would spring for the more expensive tourniquet, even if it is a little more expensive. I think it's going to serve you better in the long run. You don't want that thing falling apart on you when you need it the most.
I'm kind of wondering if the tourniquets relate to guns. Like if somebody's carrying a Kel-Tec or a High Point for their gun, they might cheap for that $10 tourniquet. Where if they got a Walther or an H&K, they'd probably go with that more expensive, better tourniquet. I don't know.
There is like this point of diminishing returns, right? Like, and I think this is true of the gun world, certainly, and it's true here, where like there's this barrier or like a standard where things above this standard, like we could argue that this chest seal is better than this chest seal, or this tourniquet's better than that tourniquet. Like, sure, whatever, like have the debate. But there's things that are below the standard line, but like these things are just not acceptable. And I think that's the key is like, don't get, I welcome the debates on, splitting hairs over if the soft T wide is better than the cat, but both of them are above the standard of acceptability.
Yeah.
And I think we do that in the gun world too. It's like, okay, maybe you think that the Romeo Zero is better than the Trijicon, like whatever, but like they're both above the level of like, it's cool.
It's kind of like 9 versus 45. I'm not going to kick somebody out of my class for bringing a 45, but I can justify why I carry a 9, and I'm not going to be upset if they're carrying a 45. But if they come with a 22, it's a little different.
Right. That's below the line of acceptability.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I really like what you said, Brian, about carrying cheap or bad gear, because we see that a ton. I mean, it's basically dangerous to buy trauma medical gear on Amazon because it will be marketed and listed as the genuine thing. Mm-hmm. And that may not be what shows up at the door.
And it'll look like it. And
it'll look like it. It'll say it is. It'll
perform up to the point where, oops, too late.
Yeah.
Right. I'll use the analogy of like a ballistics vest. I'm in law enforcement, right? So I'm not going to have a ballistics vest that I bought out of China that I haven't. How are you going to know if it works or not? You're not going to know. It's too late. Mm-hmm. By the time you find out it doesn't work, it's too late. You're past that point of no return.
Yeah. Mountain Man Medical, this is something I appreciate about Brian's approach to things, is that Mountain Man Medical does not manufacture life-saving components. Mountain Man Medical stocks name brand tested proven components. So there is no Mountain Man Medical tourniquet. There is no Mountain Man Medical chest seal. It's just the standard name brand proven tested stuff that we know works. It's been field tested. It's been used thousands of times. The U.S. military has vetted it. Those are the components that the Mountain Man Medical stocks and sells.
So now I'm curious, now that I got this awesome, really nice tourniquet in this IFAK from Mountain Man Medical.
Oh, look at that.
I think I need to take some of the other tourniquets that I've got and kind of put them to the test. Any ideas on maybe checking them out to see if I'm sure you've done some, but I'm thinking shoot them, but obviously that's not equivalent to using medical stuff. So anything coming out of your mind that that we might be able to do?
That makes it.
I just thought of something.
What do you got?
You've seen the rubber bands on the melon?
Yeah.
Do it with the tournament. Dude, that's genius. Yeah, crank it down on the melon. Yeah, get it on video. Don't you guys jump and do that. That was my idea. I'll give you credit, but I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a tourniquet, one of those cheap tourniquets, and see if I can get the tourniquet to break before the melon breaks.
I want to see it.
That's going to be good. It's going to be a short video on our show. Sorry. Squirrel.
You're fine. I mean, all the name brand tourniquets have the company's name and the patent number on them. So that
the patent number is that the key? The patent number?
I mean, I don't know, Brian. You will know better than I. You've analyzed a lot more of these counterfeits, but I've not yet seen a counterfeit that actually says North American Rescue on it, or says Tactical Medical Solutions right on it. So these counterfeits, so far, to my experience, have not been so brazen as to put the genuine company manufacturer name on them along with the patent number.
Just make it look like it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of little identifiers on my YouTube channel. I talk about that, about how you could spot out. They're fairly easy. to figure it out. So if you want to check out, make sure that your tourniquet is actually a legit one and not one. Now, I have seen like some legit companies who have made that same mistake where they have stocked their trauma kits with Amazon tourniquets. So I think, Jacob, you found one in one of your kits. I remember I put that video out and he went and checked his to see if he had any counterfeits, and he found some. It
was a name brand kit. I won't say the name of the company because I don't want to disparage anyone, but this is a well-known company. Like they exhibit at SHOT Show.
Wow.
And they're a well-named brand company. They're not in the sole field of making and manufacturing medical kits, but they happen to make and sell medical kits. And they had shipped me a trauma kit moons ago. And I went and opened it up. This is now several years ago, and pulled out the cat. Not a genuine cat.
And I'll see comments pop up all the time on my channel like, hey, I appreciate this video. I went and checked my trauma kit and it had some counterfeits in it. As a matter of fact, I have a friend from a very large Denver hospital who is a paramedic. He was running up on a guy who got shot in the leg, started to try to apply the tourniquet and it fell apart in his hands. And luckily he had an official cat tourniquet in his pocket as a backup, pulled that out, saved the guy's life with that. But even the big hospitals, I don't think people are doing it maliciously. I think they just try to save a quick buck. They say one tourniquet is good as another. No big deal, right? Well, that's a pretty big deal.
Right, for sure. So that being said, it's making me think as far as that and making this like a public service announcement for people to actually check your tourniquets. And I think that's definitely a good, something people should do.
And beyond the tourniquet, Matt, I'll add tourniquet's the most obvious one to point at because there's so many knockoffs of the cat.
Right.
But this is about you having proven tested gear. Mm-hmm. And as you pointed out, Matt, when you said like with the body armor, you're not going to go cut someone open to see if these chest seals work, right? So how do you know if it's proven or tested? Well, you're using components that have been used by military and law enforcement for a long, long time. They've been thoroughly tested and vetted, and we know that they work. And so that's a short list of companies out there. Like we're not talking about 150 brand names you need to recognize. There's probably 5 or 6 that pretty much control that game. North American Rescue, Tactical Medical Solutions, Combat Medical, H&H Medical, which is now owned by Safeguard Medical. Those are probably the biggest players that are manufacturing the majority of these components we're talking about. There's others too. Like I'm not trying to leave anyone out, but the point is like a quick Google search and you can find out. And for the most part, these components are made in the U.S. because they have U.S. government contracts with the military, and military requires that these components be made in the U.S. So if you go open your kit and beyond the tourniquet, if you pull out the chest seals or your Israeli bandage or your whatever, and it says made in China or it has no brand name on it at all, looks kind of generic,
right?
The English is questionable. Like that is not kit I would trust.
Sure. So that makes me think of carrying 2. I carry 2 guns, right? 2 is 1, 1 is none, that old mentality. I have the IFAK on my ankle, but then also maybe having an extra one. Like when I go to the range, I have one on my ankle, but then I also have the Mountain Man medical kit that you have behind you, Jacob. I have that. And then I'll show all my students and then I'll say, okay, everybody's watching, right? And then I'll throw it to one spot on the range and say, that's where it is. That's where it stays unless there's a medical emergency. Don't pick it up. Don't move it. Now everybody saw me do it. They got a visual representation of that kit hitting the ground. So hopefully that ingrains in their brain enough that if there's a medical emergency, at least they know where there is a tourniquet, stop the bleed kit, if you will.
Yeah, I think having multiples is always important. The problem is you can carry a pretty big trauma kit and you might only be able to take care of one person with that. If they're really messed up, say you only have one tourniquet and they've got a bilateral problem with their femoral arteries, then you're going to need 2 tourniquets to take care of that. So making sure that you not only you have one tourniquet, but also some items that can be used as tourniquets if you need to. That's one of the reasons why I like the SWAT T. I'm a big fanboy of the SWAT T because you can use it as a tourniquet and as a pressure dressing and as a bunch of other things.
Sling.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can use it for a bunch of different stuff, and it turns it into a multi-purpose item,
Right.
as well as a backup tourniquet if you need one. So yeah, having multiples is a big deal.
And the benefit of that too is I've heard a lot of people say, thank God I've never had to use it, but use it for kids. That'll work on a child more than some of the other name brand ones will work on adults.
Well, they've actually done some research recently, and according to some of the journals that I've been reading, they have been having a significant benefit for using the cat tourniquet and the soft tee on children. Pretty small, as a matter of fact. The reason why is because the limbs are so small, they're easy to compress, and they don't have a high level of blood pressure. So it's easy to occlude that artery, even if you're not getting like a perfect circumferential pressure. It's still going to be enough to take care of that child. So I would recommend, if you've got a bleeding kid, go ahead and throw that tourniquet on like you would an adult, and it'll most likely do what you need it to. If you don't have a tourniquet, direct pressure, especially if you're working on a kid, direct pressure, you can clamp off that artery with, man-sized hands. You just grab on, and you should be able to occlude that artery pretty well.
Good info. Very good. All right, what do we got for number 3?
All right, number 3 is stuff you don't know how to use or you won't need. So one of the things that I'll see pretty often is people carrying things like a needle decompression, or something like that, or maybe like a scalpel, or,
IV kit.
IV kits, so.
But I was a combat lifesaver in the Army, and I learned how to put IVs in the Army.
Yeah. If you can do it, I mean, that's up to you. As long as you're in
20 years,
you've been trained to do it. That's the key. So you never know how. I got trained how to do a crike with a key. When I was in, it's kind of a messy procedure, but if you know how to do it, that's totally up to you. But most of the people that I see throwing those types of things into their kits don't really know how to use them, and you can hurt someone pretty badly otherwise. Another thing that I'll see is like an OPA, an oral pharyngeal airway. And those are more specialized tools used by, paramedics and doctors, and you kind of have to know what you're doing to use that. So if you're looking to maintain a good airway, a nasal pharyngeal airway just goes into the nose. It's just a soft piece of rubber. So you're not going to really mess your casualty up. If you put it in and they don't really need it, it's not going to hurt them. So just making sure that you're carrying the right gear is going to be important.
Gotcha. Good. That's good. Yeah. Right gear. Stuff you don't need. I think in the industry, sometimes we're like that. We throw everything in there and we get to the range. We're like, we got our tactical vest and, our cool shoot me pants and everything else. And we look tactical.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. It's all about ego, right? Like I want to be able to show up to the cool kids club, and when trauma gear comes up, I want to be like, well, do you guys got MPAs in your kits? I got an MPA. Like they're like, oh, I mean, I'm like, now I feel cool, right? Because I got something you don't got, and it's cool. Yeah. So we see plenty of that.
I see a lot of the times, like we got these. I'm definitely guilty of this as well, where you've got these guys that are learning how to shoot, and they'll drop $1,200 into a pistol with a red dot and ammo and spare mags and all that kind of stuff, no problem. But then when it comes time for a trauma kit, I get it. It's not as sexy. It's not quite as cool. I get it. But gunfighting is an inherently dangerous hobby. And you need to be able to not only patch holes in yourself, but the people around you. The people that you love nearby, you're carrying a gun for protection of your family, and they get hit in the middle of that gunfight. You want to be able to take care of them until the paramedics can show up.
So it's, since you're speaking of that, and we're trying to get the people out there to listen and understand that if you're carrying a gun, I always go to the next step. I call it the trifecta, your trifecta of tools. And your trifecta of tools is lethal, less lethal, medical. If you're carrying a lethal weapon, I carry 2 guns and 2 knives almost every day. 2 guns, 2 knives off duty. Right, on duty, it's more stuff. But lethal, then less lethal, pepper spray, taser, stun gun, even a flashlight. I mean, you have a flashlight where you can strobe somebody or hit them with it as a, like a Kubaton, something like that is a less lethal option, because granted that probably the majority of the time you're going to be able to use that or be justified in using that than you would a gun. And then medical. It's like you got a seatbelt in your car, but you don't put it on. No, you put it on because there's potential for a car accident. So you put it on before the potential of that car accident happens.
Yeah, our industry is one where we weigh stakes and odds. right? So thinking of like a gun, the odds of needing a gun are extremely low.
Right.
I carry one every day, not because the odds are high. Wait, I just said the odds are low. I carry one every day because the stakes are high. Because should I need one, it's life and death. Now, medical is interesting because the stakes are just as high as the gun, right? Like if I need my trauma kit, without question, we're still talking about living and dying, just like the gun. But the funny thing is that the odds are higher. So if we're comparing the gun and the medical, like we're talking about similar stakes, life and death, but higher odds with medical. Like, am I more likely to get carjacked or be in a car accident? Am I more likely to have a home invasion or for one of my kids to do something stupid with a kitchen knife? Like, it's not rocket science. The odds are much higher, but the stakes are just as high as if you ever need a gun.
I think one of the other things is like, the political views around guns. Not everybody's comfortable with carrying a gun or believes in the Second Amendment or, wants that responsibility. But I think pretty much anybody anywhere in the world, no matter what your political position, can agree that, trauma kits are a good deal. It's not just for gunfighting. It's for a lot of other things that you might come across as well.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. All right.
Number four. Not having the 4 essentials. So we're going to talk about mostly like what we were interested in is bleeding control, of course. So you want to make sure that you have redundancy for that, making sure you've got a couple of different items to handle bleeding control, because that's what's going to kill you the most quickly. You can bleed out between 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes before you've lost enough blood that you can't recover from that. So one of the things that's kind of helpful is knowing that you do have about 2.5 minutes to throw that tourniquet on. So you've got time. That's something that helped me out as a young medic. I thought I had to rush. Anytime you rush, you start making mistakes, and you don't get the job done. So something that really helped me was slowing down and making sure that I know, like, all right, this is a bad situation. I need to hurry, but I don't need to rush it. And that kind of helps me to make sure we get that across. So the 4 essentials: tourniquet, hemostatic bandage, or hemostatic wound packing material, pressure bandage, and then chest seals, especially for your gunfighters out there. Now, the chest seals aren't going to be that beneficial in any circumstances that's not related to gunfighting, because you're looking at puncture wounds and that kind of thing. So obviously bullet holes are going to be your main problem there. But when it comes to bleeding control, it's going to be your tourniquet. Obviously, if you have a wound on your extremity, arms and legs, then you can control that very quickly and very easily with a tourniquet. And some people will be like, well, if I apply that tourniquet, that person might die, right? Or that person might lose that limb or will lose that limb. Like it's kind of, yeah. And that's something I constantly hear over and over again. And that is not the case. Most of the time, if you see really bad bleeding, just apply the tourniquet and they're going to be okay, as long as they can get to the doctor within 2 hours. Here in America, you're going to get to a hospital within 2 hours. That's not going to be that big of a deal. So when in doubt, just apply the tourniquet and your casualty will be okay.
And then I've heard varying views on where to apply it. I've had people say, apply it just above the cut. But then again, how do you know where the cut is? How do you know where the wound is based on clothing, based on blood? So I've heard other people say, go as high as you can on that extremity, or right up to the to the hip crotch area, or up to the armpit area.
Yes, that's the best rule of thumb. Now, technically, proper procedure is 2 to 4 inches above the wound. But then, of course, like you said, you might not know exactly where that bleeding is coming from. So if you have time, like you're not being shot at, then you might expose the wound, figure out exactly where it is, determine how bad the bleeding is, and whether or not you should use a pressure bandage and wound packing, or should you upgrade to a tourniquet. But in the middle of a firefight, in an emergency situation, we don't have that kind of time.
Right.
Just get it high and tight, throw that on. Then you know for sure that the bleeding is controlled, and then we can move on from that point. So
I had a military flashback. You said high and tight. So.
High and tight. Oh yeah. Not for me anymore.
Yeah, I know. I shaved for you guys today.
Oh.
It's a hard habit to break. I actually met with Tom Givens, and I walk in. He goes, you don't have a beard. You don't have tattoos. I go, how do you know I don't have tattoos? And he's like, do you? I'm like, no. then he goes, tell me you're carrying a gun. I go, I'm carrying 2. Does that help offset the other 2 things that I didn't, he's like, are you a man or not? I guess I got to have a beard. I got to have tattoos, and I got to carry at least 1 gun to be a man, I guess.
I have a checklist as well. And I give Riley, my business partner, crap all the time because on my checklist is a dog and he doesn't have one.
No, but he's got a lot of cats.
No, he has no cats either, but
Clint's like that.
You need to have guns, dogs, trucks, and a barbecue grill. I think that's kind of the list.
Yeah, I got a truck, barbecue grills. I got a couple. I got a dog. I got 2 dogs, a cat, a rabbit, chickens, bees. Yeah, you got these too. Got to have killer bees.
Yeah, you're set. Brian, tell us more. You mentioned 4 essentials. You said tourniquet, a hemostatic, so sort of wound packing material, pressure bandage, and chest seals. Talk a little bit more about pressure bandage. You also mentioned it when you said, hey, maybe the wound doesn't require a tourniquet. So pressure bandage is a bit of a generic term. Like, just clarify.
Well, okay. So one of the main problems that I'll see in a trauma kit is that they'll have tourniquets, lots of tourniquets everywhere, which is great. You need tourniquets. They help out quite a bit, but tourniquets only work on your arms and legs. So if you get hit anywhere else on your body, you're going to need something to control that bleeding as well. And that's where your hemostatic wound packing and your pressure dressing comes in. Those 2 things are always used together whenever possible. So your hemostatic bandages are going to be like Quick Clot and Kaido gauze. And then your pressure bandage is going to be something like the ETD from North American Rescue, or your Israeli bandage, or the Olias from TACMed Solutions. So what that does is, if you have a junctional wound, so you take a bullet to your neck, to your groin, or into your armpit, you're not going to be able to control that bleeding with a tourniquet. The anatomy just won't work. So you need to have some way of controlling that. And wound packing is the most effective and beneficial thing for controlling that bleeding. So you just pack the wound with that hemostatic gauze, and hemostatic is just a fancy word for it makes the blood clot more quickly, helps to control that bleeding. But your primary effect when you're wound packing is getting pressure down on that artery. So you need to pack it down nice and tight, and then you take a pressure bandage, wrap it around so that it stays in place and maintains that pressure and controls the bleeding. So have a tourniquet, very important, but on top of having a tourniquet, you also need to have wound packing material and a pressure dressing in order to cover all of your all of the things that you might need for bleeding control.
Yeah. Okay. And the pressure bandage can be used independently, presumably, for a less lethal wound.
Cut, right? Just a basic cut.
Yeah, if it's not life-threatening, it's like it's bleeding pretty bad, but I'm not really worried that this person is going to die. Right. Then I'm going to apply a pressure bandage first and see if I can control it with that. If it soaks through the pressure bandage and it doesn't look like it's controlling the bleeding at all, you immediately just upgrade to a tourniquet, and that's proper procedure.
And then if you can't upgrade to the tourniquet because of the area, then that's where you start putting the hemostatic gauze on.
Right. You start packing it into the wound, get it nice and tight to that artery, direct pressure, save a life.
Nice. Awesome. Now, speaking of bleeding, do you know statistics wise, as far as like bleed out? I've always heard different variations of that, like, just like the police response time, there's a national standard or a national amount. Is there industry standard in the medical profession where like somebody's going to bleed out in like 8 to 12 seconds or anything like that?
Well, it depends on the artery, of course, and it depends on the size of the wound. Right. So, but a femoral bleed is kind of like the standard for trauma medicine. Like, how long does it take to bleed out from a femoral artery? And the average rule of thumb there is about 2.5 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
So it could take longer, depending on, maybe it's just a little nick in the artery. It's not completely severed. But that's the general idea, is that's how quickly it could occur.
Now, after that, there's still oxygen in the muscles. So, and then if you add on to that, somebody who's on drugs, that could also take, they could still have a fight after that, right? So 2 to 3 minutes bleed out, but that doesn't mean go unconscious. That doesn't mean they're dead and they can't be recovered, right?
Yeah, it's unlikely after that point. They'll have to get blood products on board pretty quickly in order to stabilize that casualty. So hopefully you've got the bleeding controlled enough. But one of the things that I like to talk to gunfighters about is, being careful. Say you run up onto somebody who's been shot or injured in a violent encounter. Now they don't have very much blood in their body. Like, say you come up on one of your fellow officers who's been shot and you're trying to help him out, and he doesn't realize that you are his partner. You come running up onto him. His brain's not working very well because he doesn't have a whole lot of oxygen in there. Yep. Not a lot of blood, right? So he sees you standing over top of him, and what's he think? This guy's bad guy coming to finish me off, right? It puts two in your chest or whatever. So point. You need to be paying attention. Your trauma casualty could act erratically, and you need to make sure that you're securing any weapons that you might find and keeping those nice and safe for them while you work on them.
Yeah, that thought process is kind of like somebody swimming that's drowning, and you jump in to help them. They're going to try to drown you to try to save their own life in that sense. That makes sense. That's a good
Absolutely.
point.
Yep.
And I was thinking too, on the flip side, as far as a bad guy, that's why I was kind of going down that road with that question. Like, just because you shoot somebody and it's been 2 to 3 minutes, you don't know if you've hit a femoral artery or not. And it's been 2 or 3 minutes. You're thinking, okay, they're laying on the ground, but if they're on drugs or they got their will to fight is more than their, their ability to die, you still got to be careful in that sense. Cause I get a lot of people that'll say, well, if I shoot them, I'm going to go over and give them medical aid. And I'm like, I caution that, because they could still be a threat. And then it could also hurt you in court if you're rendering medical aid to somebody. It could make it look like in your mind, you made a bad decision in shooting them in the first place, right? Not saying don't call medical help, right? Not saying, don't be compassionate for somebody you shot. Like Michael Waller told me the story is, how he felt very compassionate for the person he shot, but the guy just shot at him and his son, so you're still going to have that human component, but there's a fine line between giving medical aid to somebody who just tried to take your life and you had to defend yourself against.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the benefits I like about being a medic is you get to render care to people. You get to take care of people in their direst moments. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you cross me, I will destroy you, and I think, I would rather not shoot that person. I would rather us all just get along. But if it comes down to it, I'm going to need to do it. And I would agree with that. I don't know so much about the law aspect of things. But if it were me, I would shoot that person and move to a safer location and let paramedics come in and deal with it.
Yeah. Now, the hat aspect, me being law enforcement, and then also obviously being a citizen, when I carry off duty, I try to get it across to medical professionals. I guess is where I'm going with this. Doctors, nurses, EMTs, paramedics. If you're out and about and you're not engaged in work, and you come up across a situation where somebody's trying to harm you, and this is usually where the question comes from, and they defend themselves, then they feel like they have a moral obligation, Hippocratic oath and all that, where they've got to go now and render first aid to the person and I try to get across them, that's a different hat, right? You're at that current point, you're a citizen who's defending yourself against a bad person. Do you have the ability? I mean, there's still that liability possibility that you didn't render aid and you could have more than the average citizen, but you're still putting yourself in a dangerous situation because they could have a knife, like you alluded to. I didn't even think of that. You walk up on somebody who doesn't have a lot of oxygen going through their head, and maybe they're already cuckoo as it is because they attacked you in the first place. And next thing you know, they lash out with another gun or a knife, or physically they grab you,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think when you start getting into trauma medicine, especially in the combat role, like what are you going? It makes it much more difficult when it comes to like your first your providers, the doctors and nurses that might want to respond for the Hippocratic oath and that kind of thing. I admire that, but the problem becomes creating more casualties, and your primary goal as a medic, as a medical provider, is your own safety. Even EMTs who are on station with police officers will not go onto the scene until it's completely clear. Right. That's a pretty standard thing. Firefighters and EMTs and paramedics will not go in until everything is secured. So again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would highly doubt that you would be under any legal obligation to risk your life in order to go take care of somebody. You don't want to do that because it's bad tactics. When I was a new medic, I thought, running into the smoke, save the day, drag the guy out. That's my job, right?
Movies.
Yeah, the movies. This is the movies, right? Being a hero sometimes means making the right decision and taking care of yourself first, because if you get hurt, now you've got two casualties. Those two casualties, you might not have enough resources to save you both. Both of you die. And so it's always a better practice to maintain your own safety.
For sure. Yeah, there's a good analogy that I use, or question that I ask my students. I'll say, I want everybody in the room to think of two people in your life that you care about deeply and they care about you deeply. Right. And if you die, now they're emotionally or financially without you, right? They're going to be devastated because you're gone. So we got to make good decisions so we don't put ourselves in that situation. It's our job to make it home to them. That's why we carry firearms. That's why we train, so that we can protect the ones we love, that we can protect ourselves, so that we can be around for the ones we love. And a lot of times I think we get caught up in the tangible crap that we have all around us that we can't take to the grave with us. And really, I mean, it kind of comes down to, there's nothing in this world worth dying for other than somebody you love.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. What's number 5?
All right. Number 5 would be not having safety gear, such as, gloves and shears. Having like a couple of pairs of gloves is always nice. I like to have at least one pair, but 2 is better. I've ripped through quite a few pairs of gloves in my time trying to get to the casualty. And so having a backup pair is always nice. Or you might just have an extra pair that you can throw to another responder so that they can help you out and hold direct pressure. And you got some gloves right there.
Yeah.
And shears. Look at that.
There you go.
For sure.
Every kit we sell at Mountain Medical has shears and gloves for 2 really important reasons. One, we think they're really important, but 2, they're really cheap. Yeah. Like, these are not expensive components. They don't take up a lot of space either. So gloves and shears. Shears is an interesting one, Brian, because I do like, that's actually a thing that people ask about, because a lot of people are like, well, but I got a pocket knife right here, right? I got my knife. So what do I need shears for?
Yeah. Well, see, that's one of the things I like to talk about quite a bit, because, in an emergency situation, everybody's got the pocket knife. Right. And I've seen so many videos. I've been on so many calls where they'll need to like cut the pants off or something like that. And some Bubba's got, pops out his Benchmade and says, let me just skin this dude right out of his clothes.
Let me get that for you.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that hog sticker there. So like, they think they're just going to take that knife and just skin them right out of their clothes. No big deal. And you can do that. I'm not going to say that you can't, because sometimes, situation dictates. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, but you have to pay attention to, like, this is an emergency situation. Right. There's a lot of times there's people running around screaming, or maybe your casualties moving all over the place. Right. You take that knife, running it up their pant leg, you accidentally cram it right into their femoral artery. Not a great look. Right.
Or feeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, you have to think about when it comes to it.
So something like this, I mean, these are very lightweight. They feel like they're aluminum. I mean, they're stronger than that, but they definitely feel very lightweight. And it's got the nice little spot there. So you got a guide. It's not going to cut anybody. I'm assuming, other than that point right there, I'm assuming TSA approved. Any issues with?
Yeah, those are TSA approved.
You shouldn't take them from, and the key word is shouldn't, because you know how TSA is. They took my tactical pen. They said it was a Kubotan.
Yeah. Those are TSA approved. Those are the Mountain Medical compact shears. And
nice.
This is another weird kind of strange thing. And I know that none of us want to talk bad about, a good Benchmade or a Spyderco or something, but there's also a question of effectiveness. Like, a good knife was not designed to pull off a bunch of clothes. Brian, you did a video not too long ago on your channel, on the YouTube channel, where it was a surveillance video, or a body cam video, from 2 officers who show up on a wound victim. It might be in Illinois or something. I can't remember where it was. And it's a really horrible situation. Like, the ambulance passes these dudes like 4 times trying to find them.
Wow. And
one of them, he whips out his knife and he's trying to get this dude's shirt off with the knife, and it just won't cut it. Like, it just won't get it done. I don't know if it's a combination of blood or, the knife's too dull. I mean, any number of things. But the knife's not designed to do that. Like, its primary design and function was not to cut through denim jeans or a cotton T-shirt or a hoodie, and sometimes multiple layers of that. Whereas those shears, they are purpose built for that function.
Yeah. One of the things that I like to talk about a little bit is like, the shears are the reason why they're so good is because you're not going to harm your casualty. You can run it up and you can cut them out of their clothes and they'll be a lot safer. But if you don't have a knife, if all you have is a knife, there's a technique that you can use that makes it a lot more effective. And you just open up the blade of the knife, you tent the material, the coat or the shirt or whatever, and you just poke a hole in it, put that knife away safely so that you're not slashing around and doing anything. You put a finger in the hole and it just tears away so easy. I love bullet holes for that same reason. I don't even bother to get out my shears. I just get my fingers in that bullet hole, rip it away, slap that chest seal on when you're ready to go. The other thing is like a lot of people will like get the expensive shears, they got the Raptors and like the X shears and they're like $70-$80.
Wow.
And if your job is to cut people out of their clothes on a daily basis, that might be a good thing for you. But the cheaper shears tend to be more of my favorites because I'm just going to throw those things away. I'm not going to hold on to them. They're going to be full of blood and gristle, and I'm not going to go in there with a toothbrush and clean that thing out. So I'm just going to throw them away, get myself a new set and be ready to go.
The high point carriers, they will though. They'll toothbrush it. So it's, you mentioned that as far as you using a knife and cutting through the pants or cutting into the person. I did a hog hunt in Florida when I was down there teaching classes in December, and I got a hog and we actually sticked it with a knife and we went to skin it using a knife a little sharper, and it actually had a little bit of a curve back. Bram Frank knives are what we have. Bram's a sponsor of the show, but the knife actually had a little bit of a curve back like this, and went to skin it and it went right in belly, and we got contaminants everywhere. So pop the chest cavity and hit the stomach.
Ooh, I bet that smelled great.
Oh yeah, it was good. Anyway. So I know what you mean by that. That's not a human, but hey, we practice on pigs a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's discouraged, but it happens.
Yeah, for sure. Don't let PETA come in. People eating tasty animals. Oh wait, that's the other one. All right, so good. So 5. Any key points? Anything to touch on that you think that we missed that we want to interject on? I think this was good. Very good content.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would like to leave somebody with, is if you don't have medical gear, if you don't have a trauma, if you don't have a tourniquet or that kind of thing, direct pressure is going to do a lot of good to help somebody with bleeding. So just because you don't have a tourniquet or you run out of tourniquets, remember that direct pressure, just get your body weight into it and hold it right on top of the wound. That'll do a lot of good for somebody and might save their life in the long run. But trauma gear, always way better to have. And
continued direct pressure, right? So don't take it off and go again. Keep it on there.
Yeah.
More clothes on top if it's bleeding through, just like a bleeding wound, right? Keep putting more clothes on top to soak up, saturate, or
you don't want to. You're not looking to soak up blood. What you're looking is that direct pressure. So just the palm of your hand. A lot of people will use t-shirts or something. They'll wad it up on top.
Yeah,
that's not really doing anything. What's really doing it is the direct pressure.
Okay.
Right?
So if you see pooling of blood or whatever you have, if you do a t-shirt or whatever, just the clothing, if you see blood continuing, it means you need to probably do more pressure.
Yeah, more pressure and maintain it until after the tourniquet has been applied. And then you're just going to let up very slowly to see if the bleeding has stopped completely. And then if it has, then you should be good to go.
Awesome.
Brian, will you talk a little bit about your emergency trauma response course on Matt Medical?
Yeah, we got a free online trauma course. It only takes about an hour and 20 minutes or so, completely free. And I've had doctors and combat medics and paramedics and all sorts of people taking the class. They say they really liked it. So I think it's a fantastic one. We got a lot of people that have gone through it. I don't even know what the numbers are so far. I don't know if you know, Jacob.
Over 1,000.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
It's going pretty good.
And this would be equivalent to a stop the bleed kind of thing?
Yes. Better in my opinion.
I like it.
I'm a little biased, I think, but yeah, I think it's definitely better.
Well, we'll help get the word out.
I pulled some stats on it this morning. Brian has asked me to pull some stats. He's going to talk a little bit more about it, but the percentage of people who enroll in the course and actually finish it, 23%. People, though, who complete the first lesson of the course, there's 13 or 14 lessons, 47% percent of them finish the course.
Mm.
So like a lot of people sign up for it because it's like it takes very little time to sign up for the free course.
Yeah.
It takes more time to actually take the course. But
Right.
it's free. So a lot of people are like, oh, I'll do it one day. You know, I'll come back and I'll do this.
Yep.
But I
Once
guess
they
that's
get
my
the
little.
once they get the taste, though, they're like, "Oh, wait, that wasn't a good choice of words." Once they
Once they get started, once they get some momentum.
Yeah, once they get
start to consume.
Once they get indulged with the content.
Yeah. It really shocks me that so many people, I mean, thousands of people that have gone to that website and said, "Yeah, I'll do it." They enroll in the course and they don't even start it. They've never started it. It just sits there. It's free, which in some ways is a detriment. Could give someone the impression that there's no urgency or
no value to it. Right.
Right. But like,
yeah,
please.
That's the big thing with anything online. And I've noticed that since COVID, before COVID, I charge 100% up front, take a course from me. And when they show up, it's usually most of them show up because they got skin in the game. They paid full price for the course. They're taking a seat. But since COVID, it's weird. It's been like, I did a course 2 weeks ago locally, and I think I had 4 or 5 people that didn't show up. You know, they're just didn't show up. And you paid for it. And they didn't contact me and say they couldn't make it. They had COVID, nothing, just no show. So, you know, and most of them will just re-sign up again, but it's still weird, different age we live in.
Yes.
All right, Brian. So how do people find out more about you, follow you, stalk you, all that stuff?
Yeah, look me up. I'm on all the social medias. We got TikTok. We even just did a TikTok. So if you want to do a duet, let me know.
Nice.
And I guess that's a thing. I don't really know much about it. We got Instagram, Mountain Man Medical, and then of course my YouTube channel is where I put a lot of the content. We've got how-to videos. I do some reaction videos to actual traumatic events and kind of talk about it afterwards. We just did one on sword fighting. I found an illegal fight club where they fight with swords.
Whoa.
It's pretty awesome. So you can check that out on the YouTube channel. And break that sucker out. Get that sword moving. And then make sure you go to mountainmanmedical.com. That's where we sell all of our trauma kits. And then we also have the emergency trauma response course that we just talked about. So if you want to get trained up, learn how to use the items in your kit, that's the way to do it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it's been awesome having you. Any final closing thoughts or words, Jacob?
I just appreciate Brian's expertise and the time that he brings to it. I'll give this last shameless plug for Brian and Mountain Man Medical. The business model at Mountain Man Medical is to provide name brand components, compile them into a quality kit, and sell it for less money than anywhere else. So, check it out and take it seriously. And it's worth the investment. And I promise you, you're not going to do better anywhere else. But if you happen to be a firearm instructor or somebody in the industry, at the bottom of the website, there's a link there on the Brian's website that says available discounts. And there are some discounts available for professionals who work in the game.
Well, and Mountain Man Medical is a sponsor of the show. So we thank you guys for that and, believing in us enough, like we believe in you. And we're going to definitely promote the class, your online class, and keep promoting all the products like we have been. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Love it. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Stay safe, friend.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Klint Macro. A number of years ago, as we all watched the tragic events of Parkland unfold on the TV, one of my colleagues, Grant Gallagher, co-founder of National Train to Teacher Day, reached out to me with a tremendous idea. His idea was that we band together as a unified front of independent professional firearms and safety instructors and offer free training to teachers, school staff, and administrators so that we could help empower them. Empower those people who are charged with the safety and education of our children with information and knowledge that would help them if ever, God forbid, evil were to darken the door of the schools in our communities. I thought this was a great idea. So I got the website built right away and sent out a call to action to my colleagues across the country. They answered the call. Hundreds of volunteer instructors offered their time, effort, and energy for the first National Train to Teacher Day, which took place in 2018. So we've done this every year, 2019, 2020, 2021. The last 2 years have been a little bit rough because of the pandemic, but we're going to hit 2022 very hard, and we're starting that today. I am proclaiming the 5th annual National Train to Teacher Day to be June 18th, 2022. Hundreds of volunteer instructors across the country are offering free training to teachers, school staff, administrators, and those that work with youth in a leadership capacity. That could be clergy, could be Sunday school teachers, could be priests, preachers, rabbis, and reverends. If you fit that category and would like to obtain some free training, whether it be gun training, safety training, unarmed training, pepper spray, situational awareness training, medical training, visit nationaltrainateacherday.com, and there you can connect with one of the volunteer instructors. If you're an instructor and you'd like to volunteer your time, effort, and energy to this cause, you can also volunteer on that website using the Volunteer tab. I'm very proud to say that over the years we have picked up some sponsors and some partners, and this year the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, the USCCA, Sabre Pepper Spray, and Taser are all sponsoring the 5th Annual National Train a Teacher Day. And what that means is they're going to offer free training supplies to certified instructors that teach their respective curriculum on National Train a Teacher Day. We've also partnered up with DC Project, a Girl and a Gun Shooting League, and the Armed Women of America. These organizations are fantastic organizations that are empowering our fellow Americans, and they're also helping us spread the word so that we can reach more end users in this program. Visit nationaltrainateacherday.com and find an instructor in your area. If there's not an instructor in your area, contact me. My information is on that website, and I will do my level best to connect you with a professional instructor that can offer you training on June 18th, 2022. I look forward to working with you, and I thank you all for participating. I really have to thank my volunteer instructors. If it weren't for you, this program would be nothing, and I am humbled by the amount of support that I've seen across the country from my fellow firearms and safety instructors. Visit nationaltrainateacherday.com for more information. Until then, we'll see you next time.
There's lots of sponsors that make this show possible, like Mountain Man Medical.
Check them out and give them your business.
This episode is brought to you by Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Next Level Training, the makers of the CERT pistol. TheGunFood.com, your online source for ammunition. Mountain Man Medical, the right medical training and gear should be accessible to every American. Meet the Pressers is also generously supported by other fine companies, ranges, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening to our show.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. Click that little bell thingy so you know when the next episode's uploaded. Support us on Patreon. Come to one of our classes. Host us to come to you and do one of our classes at your location.
And until next time,
adieu.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.